Hi, I love you, and a cop, dush, bang, throw her away. Sometimes they overreact.
For years, people swore Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison were the wild twins of the 60s, the kind of duo that could have blown the roof off the world if they ever teamed up. But here's the shocker. Janis couldn't stand him. Her hate ran so deep that even her closest friends avoided mentioning his name around her. It all blew up after one single night. One random encounter that flipped everything upside down. From that moment on, the two legends became total enemies. No apology, no peace, nothing. What really went down between them? Stay tuned, because this story will leave you stunned. Everyone thought they were meant to be back in early 1968, long before the rumors started spinning out of control. Back then, Janis actually admired Jim Morrison. She was still rocking with Big Brother and the holding company, bouncing between San Francisco and Los Angeles, bringing pure fire to every stage. At the KFRC Fantasy Fair, she saw Morrison perform, and it hit her hard. The way he commanded that crowd, wild and theatrical, like he was possessed. She leaned toward a musician next to her and whispered, "He's out of his mind, but he's good." That tiny spark of curiosity changed everything. Just a few weeks later, fate threw them together again, this time at a private party in Laurel Canyon. It was their first real conversation, face to face. No stage, no spotlight. They talked about blues influences, the exhaustion from endless touring, and how the industry tried to box them into roles they never asked for. Neither of them knew that this casual chat would ignite one of the most chaotic clashes in rock history. Janis was caught off guard by how calm and soft-spoken Jim Morrison was when he wasn't drinking. He actually listened, really listened, without cutting her off. He seemed fascinated by her stories about growing up in Port Arthur and life on the road. Later, she told a friend, half laughing but clearly impressed, "I didn't expect him to be polite." Coming from Janis, that was a serious compliment. At that point, no one could have guessed that she'd one day despise him. Back then, things felt light, even playful. When Morrison praised her performance from the Monterey Pop Festival replay earlier that year, Janis turned red and fired back with a grin, saying she'd steal his audience if he didn't keep up. He laughed hard and shot back that no one alive could ever out-scream her. For that quick moment, it felt like sparks were flying. Not romantic, but electric. Producer Paul Rothchild, who worked with both Janis and The Doors, noticed that strange warmth right away. He was convinced these two musical fireballs could create something massive together. So, in late August 1968, he told Janis he wanted to set up a real meeting, somewhere quiet, not another loud Laurel Canyon party, but a place where they could actually talk instead of yelling over guitars and chaos. Janis didn't even hesitate. She was in. That simple yes, made without thinking twice, set the wheels in motion for everything that came next. She walked into that meeting full of curiosity and maybe a hint of admiration. She saw Morrison as wild but genius, chaotic but magnetic, someone she could joke with, challenge, maybe even make magic with one day. Janis had no clue that the next time she saw Jim Morrison, that spark of admiration would twist into total shock. And that shock would turn into a deep, burning hatred she'd never shake off. The night everything blew apart began quietly enough. The meeting Paul Rothchild set up went down on the evening of September 13th, 1968, inside a tucked-away house in the Hollywood Hills that musicians used when they wanted to escape the spotlight. The sun was just starting to fade when Janis showed up, expecting nothing more than a chill night filled with music and maybe a good talk. She had no idea what kind of chaos was waiting for her. Inside, the vibe was mellow at first. Morrison stood by the back door, leaning against a post with a glass of wine that hadn't even been touched. Janis noticed right away and teased him with a grin, saying he was finally behaving himself. Morrison smirked, raised his glass, and said he was saving the wild part for later. It sounded harmless enough, at least for the first hour. Everything started off smooth. No tension, no drama. Janis and Jim sat across from each other at a long table, locked in one of those deep, artistic talks Rothchild always dreamed of recording. They traded thoughts on blues phrasing, on why Janis idolized Bessie Smith, and how Morrison felt trapped by that Lizard King image his fans demanded. For a while, it was raw and real. Two artists connecting without ego, just truth.
Everything started off smooth. No tension, no drama. Janice and Jim sat across from each other at a long table, locked in one of those deep artistic talks Rothschild always dreamed of recording. They traded thoughts on blues phrasing, on why Janice idolized Bessie Smith, and how Morrison felt trapped by that Lizard King image his fans demanded. For a while, it was raw and real. Two artists connecting without ego, just truth. But then the night shifted, fast. The room grew louder, the energy heavier. Morrison ditched the wine and switched to bourbon, and suddenly everything about him changed. His calm melted away, replaced by this wild edge that filled the air with tension. He dragged his chair closer to Janice, his words slurring just a bit, his voice rougher. His sentences started spilling out, half provocation, half nonsense. The soft-spoken guy from before was gone, and the look in his eyes. Janice recognized it right away, and it made her uneasy. Janice tried to play it cool, using humor like she always did when a guy started getting too pushy. She cracked a joke about needing some air and stood up, heading for the sliding door, hoping to diffuse the tension. But Morrison wasn't backing off. His shadow stretched across the floor as he followed her. Before she could step outside, he cornered her near the porch, positioning himself right between her and the exit. He leaned in close, his voice low, whispering in her ear, telling her to match his energy. Janice didn't bite. She just sidestepped, calm and composed on the outside. But inside, something felt off. She opened the door, muttered an excuse, and stepped out into the cool night, taking a long breath to steady herself. Without looking back, she made her way straight to her old station wagon parked by a big sycamore tree, her mind racing. She unlocked the door fast, ready to leave before things spiraled any further. But Morrison wasn't done. He stumbled across the dirt driveway, calling her name, that same drunken mix of charm and arrogance dripping from his voice. Janice climbed inside, hands gripping the steering wheel tight, her heart pounding. Then it happened, the moment that would change how she saw him forever. Out of nowhere, Morrison reached through the open window and yanked a fistful of her hair, jerking her back so hard her body twisted sideways. The sound that came out of her wasn't fear. It was raw, stunned disbelief. She couldn't believe it, that someone she'd respected just hours earlier would dare to grab her like that, and her reaction came fast, fierce and unforgettable. Janice didn't think. She just reacted. Her hand shot toward the bottle sitting on the passenger seat, and before she even realized it, she swung. The hit landed with a brutal crack. Glass shattered against Morrison's temple, spraying wine and shards everywhere. He dropped instantly, collapsing onto the dirt, eyes wide but unfocused, completely stunned by the blow. For a split second, the world went silent. Just the sound of glass crunching under his shoulder and the low thud of his breath. Blood ran down from his eyebrow, mixing with the spilled liquor and dust until it looked like the night itself was bleeding. Janice didn't stop to check on him, didn't even look twice. She slammed the door, fired up the engine, and tore out of that driveway so hard her tires screamed against the gravel. The air was thick with shock. Everyone who saw it just froze, not because Janice had fought back, but because Morrison had crossed a line nobody expected him to. That night didn't just start a feud. It exposed a side of him few dared to speak about, the side that made Janice's disgust for him permanent. She thought it was over when she hit the main road, thought she'd left that nightmare behind in the hills. But the real gut punch came the next morning. Janice was still reeling, angry and shaken, trying to wrap her head around how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Meanwhile, Morrison walked into the Doors rehearsal studio on Santa Monica Boulevard like nothing happened. He touched the bruise on his temple, smirked, and started laughing in front of his bandmates like it was some kind of joke. Then he said it, the line that would later reach Janice and cut her deeper than the attack itself. "She's wild. I think she likes me." Those 6 words hit harder than any bruise ever could. To Janice, that sentence proved something chilling. Morrison wasn't just reckless, he was proud of what he'd done. And from that moment on, she never looked at him the same again. Morrison didn't just cross boundaries, he rewrote reality. In his head, he turned every scene into a performance where he was always the victim, the seducer, or the hero. Janice had known men like that back in Port Arthur, the kind who could twist a woman's fear into their own fantasy, who thought resistance made the story more thrilling. That's where her hatred truly began, not from the bruise, but from the lies that followed. Within a week, the story had already mutated like wildfire around the music scene. At a studio on La Cienega, someone mentioned that Morrison had been bragging, saying Janice lost control from excitement. Another musician claimed she cracked the bottle because she couldn't handle the chemistry. Every version was worse than the last, each one flipping the truth until Janice sounded unhinged or obsessed. The real story, the one where she defended herself, got buried under his twisted charm. Morrison didn't just hurt her that night, he hijacked the narrative and turned it into entertainment. And the lowest blow came a few months later, at the Scene nightclub in New York during her East Coast tour. Janice had just finished a killer set at the Fillmore East and walked in with friends, ready to unwind, until she froze. There he was in the middle of the room, holding court like some rock and roll storyteller, loudly reenacting the bottle incident as if it were a comedy skit. He waved his arms around, pretending to dodge an invisible swing, making the crowd laugh while half of them didn't even know what really happened. Then he spotted her across the room, and instead of looking guilty, he just raised his drink, smirking like it was all one big joke. Janice stood still for a heartbeat, her face tight with disbelief, then turned and walked straight out without saying a word. In that single moment, it all clicked. Morrison wasn't dangerous because he lost control. He was dangerous because he enjoyed twisting the truth. He wasn't just reckless. He was dangerous because he believed the world owed him the right to twist any woman's truth, even if it shattered her in the process. From that moment on, Janice didn't just avoid Jim Morrison. She despised him with a sharp, unshakable certainty that never faded. Not even months later, when they crossed paths backstage at a festival and she flat out refused to look his way. After that night at the Scene, everything changed for good. The humiliation had cut too deep. Janice erased him from her life with surgical precision. No calls, no conversations, no second chances. She didn't even want to give him the possibility of warping the story again. Whenever she found out he was booked for the same event, she switched routes. When reporters tried to bring up the doors, she kept her cool. Just a short nod, maybe a polite smile, and nothing more. She'd built her wall, and no charm or fame could break through it. What most people never realized was that Janice wasn't someone who hated easily. She was quick to forgive, fast to laugh, and usually brushed off gossip like it was nothing. But this went way deeper than a bruised ego or a rumor gone wrong. Morrison had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He'd taken her fear and turned it into a show. He made her pain into a punchline, twisting truth into theater. That betrayal hit harder than any insult ever could. And yet life moved on. Their fame kept growing, their paths still crossing like two comets refusing to collide. At the Texas International Pop Festival in 1969, Morrison showed up backstage just minutes before Janice did. Someone nearby, trying to lighten the mood, joked that they should say hello like old friends. But for Janice, there were no old friends anymore, only ghosts of a night she'd never forgive. Janice froze the moment she heard his name echo backstage at the Texas International Pop Festival. The heat, the noise, the chaos, it all faded for a second. She hadn't seen Morrison face to face since that night in the hills, and the thought alone made her pulse quicken. When he finally appeared, swaggering down the narrow path behind the stage with that same careless grin, she looked away instantly. The air between them turned razor sharp, and everyone nearby felt it. A crew member, not realizing the history, laughed and said, "Hey, you two should catch up." The silence that followed could have cracked glass. Morrison, half drunk already, raised his bottle in her direction like it was some kind of joke. That same smirk plastered across his face. Janice didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared straight ahead, her jaw locked, refusing to give him even a second of her attention. That tiny moment said more than any fight ever could. Later that night, Morrison tried to send a message through a mutual friend, saying he never meant to upset her, but Janice didn't buy it for a second. She knew his apologies were just another act, another scene in the story he kept rewriting to make himself look untouchable. So she shut the door completely, not just on him, but on every reminder of that night. Her focus shifted back to what she did best: the music, the stage, the fire in her voice that no one could steal. People who saw her perform after that swore she sang differently, harder, rawer, like she was pouring every ounce of fury and defiance into the mic. It wasn't bitterness, it was survival turned into sound. By the end of 1969, Janis had turned her pain into power, while Morrison kept sinking deeper into the chaos he created. They would never speak again, but the energy of that feud, the tension, the betrayal, the truth no one dared to print, lingered in every song she sang from then on. By early 1970, Janis had buried the memory of Morrison under layers of music, motion, and miles on the road. But some ghosts don't stay quiet. Every now and then, she'd hear his name in passing, whispered in green rooms or printed in rock magazines. People still gossiped about their wild connection, twisting that ugly night into something glamorous. Each rumor stung like a fresh cut, but Janis didn't fight it. She just sang louder. Her voice became her truth, the one thing no one could rewrite. During interviews, journalists kept poking around, hoping she'd spill something scandalous about Morrison. She'd just smirk, drag on her cigarette and say, "That story's not worth telling." Then she'd change the subject to music, freedom, or her next gig. But inside, that old rage still flickered. Not because she cared about him, but because the industry loved stories where women's pain became men's legend, and she refused to give them that satisfaction. Meanwhile, Morrison was spiraling deeper. More booze, more chaos, more headlines. Whenever his name came up, Janis's friends noticed a quiet shift in her mood. She'd go still, eyes sharp, then brush it off like dust. It wasn't fear anymore. It was disgust mixed with pity. She'd seen too many men like him crash and burn, dragging everyone down with them. In her final months, while recording Pearl, Janis poured everything, every betrayal, every scar, into her songs. Tracks like Cry Baby and A Woman Left Lonely carried pieces of that history, disguised in melody but raw in spirit. On stage, she owned her story, wild, fearless, untamed, but finally in control. And though Morrison and Janis would never cross paths again, their names stayed tangled in rock history like fire and smoke, one fueled by destruction, the other by defiance. She never spoke his name again, but every note she sang after that was a reminder. No one gets to steal her truth twice. By the time 1970 came to a close, Janis Joplin had turned her pain into pure legend. Every performance burned hotter. Every lyric cut deeper, like she was singing straight from the edge of her soul. The world saw her as this unstoppable force, wild and fearless. But behind that fire was a woman who had learned the hardest truth. That strength sometimes means walking away and never looking back. Jim Morrison kept spiraling, lost in the same darkness he once tried to drag others into. When news broke of his death less than a year after Janis's own passing, the world called them both troubled geniuses, forever linked by fame, chaos, and myth. But those who knew the real story understood the difference. Janis didn't drown in her demons. She fought them until her final breath. Her voice still echoes like thunder through time, carrying all the power she refused to let anyone steal. She never needed to prove anything to Morrison or to the world. Her music was the proof. Every song she left behind holds that raw honesty, that unfiltered truth that no rumor could erase. And maybe that's what makes her story unforgettable. Not the scandals, not the pain, but the way she turned all of it into art that still shakes hearts decades later. Janis Joplin didn't just survive the madness of the 60s. She defined it, reshaped it, and set it on fire. So if this story hit you, if you felt that spark of rebellion, that pulse of truth that Janis carried in every scream and every note, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this story with your crew, and drop a comment below. Let's keep her spirit alive, loud, unapologetic, and forever unforgettable. Subscribe for more untold stories of the legends who changed music forever.